if you're on that ladder and you're beside me, I want to help you get to the next step together. If you're below me just because you started after me, or I'm just ahead of you in whatever you're trying to do, I'm going to reach down and try to bring you up with me.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
I'm supposed to, yeah, I guess I'll do your job moving forward.
It's
insane.
And I got that email right before you came on, so I was like, oh, I should not have read an email. I try to keep everything clear like 5 minutes before so I can kind of zone in.
Yeah.
It's happened too many times. I've gotten a bad email or a bad phone call like right before a podcast, and it just takes me a second to freaking recover.
It's so funny you said that. Like I try to do the same thing, dude. I've been dealing with some crazy stuff just with some of the other businesses I got going on. And I'm like, I saw an email pop up like 3 minutes ago, and I'm like, I'm not reading that right now because I know it's going to aggravate the hell out of me. So I'm like, nah, I'm good. We'll pass right now. But Such is life, right? I mean, there's ups and downs, there's wins, there's losses. I'm going to share some of that on, my podcast coming up, not in super detail because I don't want to call anybody out, but sometimes you just make bad decisions, and it's like, it's about pivoting and moving on. And I've been dealing with that like crazy recently. So
it gets tough because you get in the zone, especially like on the solo episodes. Yeah. And then like I was talking about a termination I had a couple months ago on one of my episodes, and I accidentally said his name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, I gotta edit that out.
Audit that. Yeah. Hey, delete. I always do that. I'm like, Marissa, delete that. Thanks. I'm still trying to find my groove too. I got to be honest with you. Like, it's so much more comfortable for me to just have a conversation like this than rather doing it solo, because what I found is I'll have like 10, probably 10 to 15 minute like rants that I want to talk about. And then I get behind the mic and I kind of freeze. And I'm like, it's super awkward.
Yeah. So I found this nice medium between, well, first of all, my first like 15 episodes were with guests, and that got me super comfortable. You know what I mean? And then I have so much training and just experience when it comes to building sales teams. So like I've got 12 years on certain subjects, and I try to compress them into one episode. And the solo episodes end up being 45 minutes to an hour. My last few have been kind of short, but and it's crazy because I just unload on them, and there's like, there's structure. Like I do take 15 minutes before, so like they say don't over prepare, and you know what I mean. But I do take 15 minutes before, and I'll write out like basically the structure of how I want it to roll. And for the most part, I'll keep to that structure, just like I do when I do sales meetings or like a presentation or something like that. Same
just
thing.
An outline to keep you on track, right? Because you don't want to forget what your the thoughts that you had. And I've actually, I'm only 3 episodes in, so I've actually like I'm learning this stuff as I go, right? And I do a lot of just like chauffeuring kids around, and I'm in the car quite a bit just because I got 4 kids. I'm going here, I'm going there, and a lot of my like good thoughts come like when I'm driving. I'm by myself, so I'm like, voice record, and then I go back and try to put it all together. But yeah. But it's been cool. Yeah,
All right, guys, I got Josh Payne. He's an entrepreneur, author, and mentor. He owns Payne Capital Investments and multiple franchises with 2 men and a truck. He's built multiple 7-figure businesses. He's the creator of the More Than Mindset and podcast, and he's been featured in publications such as Forbes Business Magazine and Business Franchising Magazine. Josh, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, brother.
No, thank you so much for having me. I tell you, you read that off, and it sounds like I'm so much greater than what I really am. So
you got a good PR person.
Yeah, I think my wife wrote that a long time ago. But I'm super excited to be here. Really, before we get started, Doug, I want to commend you for what you're doing with your podcast and the information that you're putting out there. I think that there are so many people who don't have, millions of downloads, who are putting out the real raw information about, just entrepreneurship, business ownership, sales processes, all the good stuff that you're doing. And just know that like it's being heard and implemented by guys like me. So I know for sure there are other people you're making an impact on. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Doing that. You need to know it's definitely being used, and you're making an impact. And I know that that's what you're all about.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the messages and stuff like that. We've kind of entered this area where in the past there's been all these influencers and everything, and they've been talking about business at a very high level. You know, they're already making multi-millions of dollars or maybe $100 million, and they're an influencer because of all their success versus, you know, now we have this platform that we've created through social media and through the guerrilla version of social media marketing that we can actually like make an impact in our local markets or even in that in-between phase where you're building your business or you're starting to scale. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But one of my best pieces of advice is never be afraid to share a lesson because you're always one step ahead of somebody else. You know what I mean? And that one step is what they need to get to the next level. So why not share that? And that could end up being one person. It could end up being hundreds. So I love this kind of space that we're playing in now. Let's talk a little bit about how we met. So I was out at the inaugural RBO Mastermind event. And, you know, we had these breakout sessions. And, of course, everybody's in the room. Everybody's like, you do it inadvertently. You know, we're alpha men, right? We size each other up. We kind of like, hey, you know, what's this guy all about or whatever. And you had been, maybe I didn't sit at a table with you, but you had been fairly quiet to that point and reserved, you know. And I was like, what's this guy all about? You know, and we sat in a breakout session. And so basically in a mastermind, a breakout session, you go around the table and talk about your big ass problem, and then everybody gives you advice on how they think you should handle it, right? And you know, you can take it with a grain of salt, you can use it, you can not use it, whatever the case is. And you are just like, every time you talk, you're just delivering gold. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? Like, I hadn't heard of you yet. And of course, everybody was new in that mastermind. Sure. So I hadn't met a lot of people, just the few people that I knew from Apex. And so you already piqued my interest, and then you talked about not wanting to kind of like share your message because you didn't want to come off egotistical. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I lost it at that point. I was like, man, you have got what you just told the last 5 guys that had a problem was like perfect advice. You know what I'm saying? So how many people are out there that aren't hearing that advice, that need that advice, and can't pay, you know, $25,000 to be in a mastermind like this? Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was like our first interaction right there.
Yeah. And I vividly remember that. It's funny. I unknowingly probably did the same thing, right? You do size up everybody in the room and you're kind of trying to figure out who does what and, you know, what industry experts are here. And those breakout sessions at masterminds, to anybody listening, those are the most impactful and powerful things that you can have at a mastermind. The speakers and the speeches are great, but if you're putting together masterminds, just remember those roundtables and breakout sessions are where guys like me, and I'm sure Doug and other high performers are getting the most value because it gives you time to interact one-on-one. But I think I told you before we connected, you know, you were the one who pushed me to turn the camera around. You made a statement to me after I said that, because I remember saying, hey, I don't want to be pompous. I don't want to act like I'm a know-it-all. I feel like I'm a nobody still, even, you know, with what little success I have. So I don't want to be on a mic and, you know, on a camera acting like Ed Milet or Andy Frisella and I've got the world figured out and I'm some billionaire. And when you looked at me and you said, hey, just turn the camera around, there's a lot of people who need to hear what you're saying. I took that to heart. And I believe it was like the next week later, I'm like, you know, I'm doing this as uncomfortable as it is. I'm going to start talking. I'm going to start posting on social a little bit more. And we've been growing that. And we started the More Than podcast where, you know, it is all about helping the in-between people that you mentioned in the beginning that aren't, you know, at the peak of the mountain yet. They're still maybe they haven't even gotten to the mountain and they're ready to climb it. Maybe they're halfway up the mountain. That pool of people needs to hear a message from people above them on that ladder of success that you talked about. Right.
Absolutely.
And it's my mission, and, you know, anybody who really cares about helping others to reach down on that ladder and pull them up with you, you know, and, sharing my message with a little kick in the ass from you to turn that camera around has really just been focused on that. I know what I know. I'm never going to talk to you about anything I don't know. Right. So if you're on that ladder and you're beside me, I want to help you get to the next step together. If you're below me just because you started after me, or I'm just ahead of you in whatever you're trying to do, I'm going to reach down and try to bring you up with me. And that's just been the entire goal and the mindset from literally after that mastermind. So, you know, I'm thankful for Cale and Trevor for putting that together. I'm thankful for being seated with you You know, I'm thankful for everybody who was at that table, because I don't, you know, I believe the universe did that for a reason, and it just kind of catapulted to where I am today. So,
and that was the sentiment around the table. And honestly, the sentiment in that group, it's like, we all have an amazing message to share, whether it's the, you know, the guy doing 100,000 a year or the guy doing 10 million a year. Like, everybody's got that message and they need to get it out there, you know? And there is I guess a big part of the problem right now, and we won't go too deep into it because I know you got a lot of value to bring, but a big part of the problem right now is there's so many people out there that are faking the message and that are using it for, you know, a quick buck. And so it just hardens everybody. There's more of them. There's more of the not real ones than the real ones, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it kind of hardens everybody to it. And, you know, not that, like, you know, most of it is reactive, right? You put the message out there and then somebody reaches out and says, hey, I heard your message, makes sense for me. You know, how would you approach this? And then the conversation goes from there. You know, you don't really have to defend it a whole lot. I mean, I chuckled the other day because I got a comment on one of my reels, you know, and reels is the biggest area of opportunity for us right now to get our message out, right?
Yep.
And some guy just put on there, you are wrong. I'm like, yes. I'm finally
Can I
getting
get a little bit of substance there.
Yeah. And you
what
know,
am I wrong about?
Yeah. And that's where my head went at first. And then I was also like, man, but that's like, how many people do you see that have like millions of views and likes and are making this huge impact that like 10% of those comments are negative, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, at this point, I'd rather have a negative comment than no comment at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at least I'm making them think, you know, I'm challenging their point of view, whatever the case is. And then if I'm getting negative comments, then it's getting outside of my current circle. It's getting outside of that circle that I'm in with people that agree with me, and I'm getting out there in the world and able to maybe next time somebody will put an actual thing or a reason that they think I'm wrong. We can actually start a real conversation.
and you have like actual dialogue about it. Yeah. And you sit there and you waste like 45 minutes of your day trying to convince somebody that your way of thinking is the right way, right? Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, you know, that was one of the biggest catalysts for me to kind of like open up that box of sharing information and like, you know, flipping the camera around and becoming extremely uncomfortable. It was the fact that there are just so many people who are sharing false messages with false intentions, right? And they're taking advantage of those people who are, you know, trying to make the climb to the top. Because when you're trying to make that climb to the top, you're really grasping and trying to find that one like golden nugget or that one piece of information from somebody who like positions himself as a person of influence or a person of success. Yeah. And you think that they just must have like some secret that you don't have. So anyone who's inexperienced and who wants to take, you know, a shortcut or get to the top of that mountain faster, they will pay you whatever you want to pay. Yeah. And I've seen so many people lose money and actually be put, you know, further back from where they were in the beginning because they wasted 20 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand on a mastermind or a coaching program that they can never get out of that. And they never can achieve the mission that they started out on. Right. And so to me, it was just, you know, I'm a disruptor. That's what I've done my entire life. Right. Like I've disrupted my family tree. I've changed that. I was the one in my family to kind of, change like what the perception of what success really is and what you can achieve. Right. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to disrupt this a little bit. And even if I get 50, 100, 200 downloads an episode, whatever it might be, I'm going to disrupt the hell out of this industry because there are too many people faking it and putting out false information. You know, I couldn't agree more with your sentiment there that it is hardened. And there are times that like, dude, there's so many times I'll record a message and I'm like, you know, how many people are going to like question me or think that, you know, I'm wrong in my thinking. And it's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like if you disagree, like that guy disagreed with you, that's fine. It's actually good, I think, to have those types of conversations so that everybody involved in the conversation can grow and learn from the other person. That's what life's about. Right. But at the end of the day, still having to defend your thoughts and the way you perceive business and life is completely different than what it was like 5 or 6, even 7 years ago, because you have these people have been burned so badly that they're they're like, you know, there's like an Antifa of people who are out there like trying to find the fake coaches, which is cool. It's good for me, but hey, don't attack me, dude. Like I'm one of the good guys. All right. Like leave me alone. Go find these bad guys. There's plenty out there, you know. It does. It takes years to prove it to them. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing the podcast for 9 months,
And I've been putting out content now for a year and a half after I joined Apex. That's part of the model, building your machine. And I've never hidden that. I'm doing exactly the model that Ryan Stewman lays out, And now that I've been doing it for a year and a half, I'm just starting to get that like momentum to where it's like, okay, Doug's a real one. He's not just another person regurgitating the same information and putting it out there and all that stuff. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit. I want to talk about where this all started. How did you get into entrepreneurship in the first place?
Yeah. So as a young kid, I always knew that business ownership was what was like my path in life. Okay. When you're 10, 11, 12 years old and, you see your parents going to work and busting their asses all the time and, living paycheck to paycheck to put food on the table, there were like little memories that were, ingrained in me at that age to where I vividly remember, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to struggle to like pay my bills. I don't want to struggle to have to put food on the table or limit the amount of food I can buy for my family that week. Right. And I was blessed to be friends with people whose parents were successful. Okay. What I thought were successful. Right. And a few of them were business owners. So it was like, at 10 or 11 years old, I got to see, a business owner. They have a nice fancy house. They drive nice cars. Their kids wear all the name brand stuff. There must be something to being a business owner. Right. And then as I progressed just through high school and into my later teen years, like after I graduated, I learned more about the world and the way that it worked. And I had those jobs that every kid has where you're like a hostess at the local restaurant. And I did some warehouse or factory work with my stepdad, like right after I graduated. And I'm like, this just isn't me. My brain doesn't work like on a 9 to 5 or a 10 to 6 type schedule. I knew that I needed to go out and ultimately when I was young, like be my own boss. That was it. It was about controlling my time so I didn't have to report to anybody else, and that's looking back I'm glad I had that mindset because it catapulted me to just always be looking for that entrepreneurship or business opportunity. But it was likely a little bit immature at the time. Right. So I just knew I wanted to own something. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to own. Right. And while I graduated and I went to college for a little bit, that wasn't for me. I knew I was good at sales, right? I cut my teeth, door knocking, selling lawn care, right? Like I'm walking up to your house and I'm saying, hey, I'm with this lawn care company. You see these dandelions out here? We'll come and treat them, and I have no idea like if the product works or whatever, but
most people don't when they first start selling.
Yeah, dude, when you're like 18, 19 years old and like you're literally dropped off in a neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, you got a cell phone and a pen and paper. You're knocking on a door. You get some sweet old lady, or you get some like asshole man. You learn to be a chameleon. You learn to communicate. You learn to like navigate those conversations very quickly. Right. So I knew that I had a knack for sales. So that was like check mark number one. So I was like, hey, I know I can make a lot of money in sales and I understand to run a business. I got to be able to sell my business. I did that for a couple of years and I got an opportunity to go be what was called an in-home consultant for 2 men and a truck. Okay. Where my job was to go into people's houses, which I was no stranger to, right? I was fine going up to people's houses and do a walkthrough, talk about the services, and ultimately get them on our schedule.
So you were the closer.
I was a closer. Yeah, that was it. I was a closer, and I fell in love with that business model, right? Because in looking back, I didn't quite understand what I fell in love with back then. It was the money, right? Because I was like, holy crap, I know what we charge. Kind of have a good idea for like the expenses on the backside. These things are cash cows.
Right.
But it also, what I didn't realize at the time is it was like filling a bucket of mine that I didn't know I needed filled. And that was like genuinely helping people in a time of need. And moving is one of the top 5 most stressful things that anyone goes through in their life, right? It's like moving, divorce, death. They're all like in that top 5. Okay. So I got an unknown satisfaction by helping, this elderly lady whose husband just passed move into a retirement home, or helping this young couple move out of their apartment into their first home, and knowing that I was a part of that process. Right. So it was twofold. I saw, hey, I can make a ton of money. Hey, I can help people, change their lives in one of the most stressful times. I was blessed to have someone he owned the franchise at the time. And he was super interested in expanding, and he was all about providing opportunity. So we had several conversations just about my want and ultimate need to be a business owner, right? Where it was like, I had to tell him one time, like, I don't want to report to you anymore. I want to be my own boss. Like, I'm confident enough to do this. Give me a chance.
Do you know how big of a blessing that is, though? Like, how old were you when that happened?
I was 22.
Yeah. So
22, 23. I was super young.
When I was 22 years old, I was being like pushed down, like, hey, you're too young. You don't know any better. You know what I mean? Like you're not ready to be a business owner, all that. And here this guy is like, he opens up that, I mean, you had to knock down the door a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But he opens up that opportunity for you. I'm assuming this was kind of your first mentor.
It was, I would say my first business mentor for sure. Right. Like where, he showed me the other side of the business I didn't quite know yet, right? The back end stuff, P&Ls and understanding like cost analysis and stuff like that. And that's not to say, so I was 22 or 23. There were plenty of people telling me I was too young to go like own a business.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there were plenty of people who said, hey, Josh, it's just, look at you. What do you know? And in my brain, it's just like, it's super easy to take that information and like become devastated by it and just think, yeah, it'll never be for me. It'll never happen. And just give up. But, I don't know what to call it or like how to explain it. It's just innately, I knew like, no, I'm going to figure this out somehow, some way. So what's super interesting, and there's like a plot twist there. It was taking too long. I was like, hey, I'm tired of like, we've had these conversations. You told me you'd give me a shot.
Yeah.
And it was never like, I never felt like he was BSing me. It was just more like the right opportunity wasn't there.
And it wasn't a priority maybe for him.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out of here. And I was like, so I'm like leaving my first business mentor. Right. And I remember being devastated. Like I remember going to the car and crying. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like 23 years old. I thought this was going to be my life. A couple weeks later, I like find this sales management job at a company, 20 minutes away. And I go and I do that for like 2 years. Right. So I'm stuck in the employee mode.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm like recruiting guys within this new company I'm working for. We like start our own little moving company that like fails because I'm trying to do it like Twilight moving and stuff like that. Right. Because like that world just like sucked me in. I was like, oh my God, I can do this. Forget 2 men in a truck. I'll go do it on my own. Didn't work. Right. Young and mature, didn't have the capital to make it work. But the entire time, even as a sales manager, like I was like doing this on the side because I knew I was just not going to continue to do this 9-to-5 lifestyle and report to somebody else. Long story short, just so happened I was pissed off one day. I was like, I got to get out of here. I can't keep doing this. I start Googling job ads, 2 men in a truck, sales manager. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, just so happens to be the guy that mentored me for a couple of years. He's looking for a sales manager. I'm like, all right. Tuck my tail between my legs, give him a call. Hey, listen, I might've been a bit immature, a bit impatient. I still have the same goal. Are you still interested in expansion? And it was just, I would say divine intervention. It was the universe working at the right time. I went back, managed the sales team there for like 8 months. By month 10, we opened up the first franchise in Canton, Ohio.
Nice.
3 hours away from my house. I had a 9-month-old son. But I said, this is my chance. Like I'm the guy here now.
All right.
So I get to go.
Now I know that we were meant to meet and to have this podcast because when I started my business or when I took over, when I owner financed it, my daughter was 9 months old.
Yeah.
My first child. Yeah.
That's super cool. So when you say owner finance that you had like, so you were like paying back the original owner with essentially like profit sweat equity is
what he thought, was the value of the business, which was $200,000 at the time. It was actually zero, but now I know that, you know what I mean? But, it ended up being a great deal for him, but it also
it's a great deal for you too, right?
Exactly. I mean, it gave me this opportunity to own something, like you said, and that's all I wanted. And I was willing to pay whatever for it. It could have been $2 million. It wouldn't have made a difference to me. I knew I was going to make it work, Well, dude,
I think like what you just said is an amazing point because that was 10 years ago for me. Right. Mm-hmm. And without that opportunity, because it was owner financing then too, like I didn't have cash to go, put $400,000 into a location.
Right.
We came up with a deal. He's like, look, you pay me $1 million. I think over 7 years, this thing will be worth $1 million. All the profit comes to me. You get a little bit over the next time. But as soon as you hit that nut of $1 million, I'll sign it over to you.
Nice.
And, and there are times I'm like 2 years in, I'm like, holy crap, like this is never going to work. Or, like, did I make a bad choice? But I was an entrepreneur. I was, I was grinding. I was doing my thing.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved at all. Right. It was my show at the end of the day. But, I just sat there and I was thinking to myself, like, this is going to take forever. right? Especially when you're doing an owner financing type thing like that. And the wheels clicked and I got him out sooner or later. But the point of that is like, so many people would sit there and say $1 million. Are you kidding me? Are you being greedy? Like what, just like you said, 200 grand, it was worth zero, but you got your chance.
Yeah.
Right. And it's about understanding, like sometimes like to have what you want, you got to pay a little bit more for it. And you got to be a little bit more risky than what other people are willing to be. And that's entrepreneurship, right? Like we are the ones who can take those punches in the gut and take those risks when other people aren't going to do it.
Right.
So, like I tell people like, yeah, I had to pay $1 million for my first run. They're like, holy crap. Like, are you kidding me? I would have never done that. And I'm like, that's why you're you and I'm me. So 10 years ago, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Now it's like, look what that step that I took catapulted me to be able to achieve. How many lives now I'm going to be able to impact because of that one opportunity that was given to me and I went and took, right?
100%. And so the first thing that he did is he let you go, right? He didn't try to create the opportunity out of thin air because he wanted to keep a good person. Obviously he knew that you had a lot of value you were bringing to the table, but he also recognized he wasn't in the spot to do it, which is hard. In my 20s, it was very hard for me to let go of good people because I didn't have the right opportunity for them at that time. But then you came back, he was able to capitalize on that opportunity and invest in you, because there is a lot of risk involved in that. You could have just went and screwed all that up, you know what I'm saying? Then he would have lost.
Said, see you later, and he's left to handle it.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was risk on his end too, which I'm sure at that point his portfolio was pretty nice and, susceptible to lawsuits and, creditors and all different kind of stuff. So, but yeah, $1 million opportunity. That's nothing in comparison to what I'm sure it's provided since then. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then not only that, it's like, there's a whole different level of get it done when you've got a $200,000 note or $1 million note, what I'm saying, to pay back. It's like, and not everybody has that. Most people are like, close up shop and I'll owe some guy $1 million. Who cares? You know what I mean? Maybe a judgment on my credit, whatever the case is, no big deal. But like, I can tell you, and I was the same way. I harbored that. I was like, I've got to pay this crap off, and he ended up, because he had ownership interest on top of the 200 grand. So he ended up over 10 years. I think I paid out like 1.2 million to him that he made on that deal completely. And it's just like you said, he wasn't involved in the business at all other than being a financial backer whenever I ran out of money, which is a big deal. You know what I mean?
It's a huge deal.
He should have made that much that he did. So
but there's two things that you said there that like resonate with me wholeheartedly. Right. And that's like the simple fact that knowing you have no other options, right? Like you had to pay that back because you had nothing else to fall back on. Like it didn't matter to me. Like I moved 3.5 hours away from my family. I didn't move. I'd go up there like 4 nights a week. I slept in the office. Right. But I had a 9-month-old son, a new wife. We had 3 older kids. And so I'm telling my family, hey, I own a business now. I got my shot. You know what I'm saying? And they're looking at me like, okay, cool. Like, look, you still don't really know what you're doing. Yeah. How cute are you? Like, so in my head, it was just like I had nothing to fall back on. There was zero opportunity for me to fail because I'm letting my wife down, my kids down, this guy who invested in me down. I didn't have a backup plan, right? And you hear people all the time say, burn the ships or whatever analogy you want to use. And dude, that is the difference between like a successful entrepreneur and somebody and a wantrepreneur, right? Yeah. Because a wantrepreneur is going to start 3 to 5 to 10 freaking businesses over a 5 to 7 year period. And they're going to fail at every single one of them because they don't burn the ships. They always have a backup plan. And it's like, to me, it was like win or die, period. Like I couldn't imagine walking back home or driving home to my wife and saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. Or I'm never going to succeed at this. Like the thought of that now, like it's still like that made me sick to my stomach to think like that. Right. It was win or die. This is your only chance. And I still have that mindset to this day. Like, and I know some people will think like I'm crazy or I'm full of shit, but you know how it is, dude. As an entrepreneur, like I wake up every day and I'm like, as unhealthy as it is, I'm like looking at, I have 8 franchises. I'm looking at like all their bank accounts and I'm making sure like everything looks good. So then I'm like, okay, now I can breathe. I can go get an energy drink. You know what I mean? And it's like, am I a psychopath? Am I crazy for thinking like that? I'm like, I'm so like, I still feel like that kid who was driving 3.5 hours, listening to podcasts, trying to figure out how to run a business, getting there and acting like I knew how to run a business, and like praying to God that the phones rang every day so we could get trucks in driveways. You know what I mean? Like, I still feel like that. It's insane.
I've got to stop doing it, because I still do it every now and then, but it used to be my ritual to wake up every morning and check the bank account. Did something come through that I didn't know about? And it is so like bad for your mental health to do that every morning. You need to.
Yeah, I do not suggest doing that. No. Don't do that, because then you're pissed off. Like, hey, what's this? I'm like texting my assistant. I'm like, what's this $8,000 check for? Like, I didn't know about that. You know what I mean? Just random stuff like that. But the point is, like, you cannot, like, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, no matter what anybody tells you, there is no secret. There's nothing you can pay for. There's no golden ticket. Like, I don't have a golden nugget. Doug doesn't have it. These dudes you see driving their Lambos and their jets, they don't have it either. What they're failing to tell you is it's called like grit, determination, and like you got to grind through it, right?
Yeah.
You got to do the same monotonous tasks every single day that are proving, like, giving you those daily wins, right? And if you can do that for enough days in a row or enough months in a row, sooner or later, you'll get a little bit of breakthrough and you're going to feel like you're winning, right? And it just drives me crazy that there's always this golden ticket for sale from these fake entrepreneurs that just doesn't exist.
No, I mean, yes, knowledge is power, but experience is 10x knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, the fact that I've been through this for 12 years now, I have a confidence when I'm waking up that I don't need to check the bank account. Yeah. And, that's going to happen at some point during the day. Don't get me wrong. But it's like I can go through my routine and not feel like there's a fire in the back of my head that I need to handle. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because I know whatever the fire is, I'm going to be able to handle it because I got 12 years of experience behind it, And the number doesn't really matter. It's like, how many times have you had a negative bank account? How many times have you been trying to make payroll the night before and you got 4 hours to get that money in the bank account? You know what I'm saying? How many times? Like, I did a lot of stupid stuff in my 20s, but it gave me a hard knock education. Whereas if I knew exactly what to do every day, I would have no backbone. You know what I'm saying?
No. Yeah. And you would be stuck where like the people in the middle are stuck at, right? Like, you're continually like trying to figure it out, which puts you in a position to where you're searching for somebody who has that knowledge, right? And, just the unfortunate thing is a lot of people, they don't have that knowledge, like, or they think they do, right? It doesn't work, And so my mission in life is not like, I don't want to give off the false sense of like, I'm not trying to be like this coaching guru or create like, like Josh is the mastermind guy or anything like that. No, like my core purpose is moving people forward. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if that means like I get to have a conversation with Doug today and somebody hears it and they take a nugget and I help them like make a decision. Okay. I moved your life forward that day. Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing with like my team. What I do, what I figured out that's a little bit different than most others is I take the opportunity that was given to me 10 years ago and I provide that to people on my team, right? So I'm constantly selling the dream of entrepreneurship and changing your family tree because of what was given to me 10 years ago, but because I also understand that I feel like, that's what kind of God put me on this earth to do, right? Mm-hmm. He had me struggle and get to the points where I had to have a mentor provide me the opportunity. Most people who want to be entrepreneurs who have that acumen, they're missing something somewhere else. And that's usually just an understanding of how a business is supposed to run or work, or they don't have the capital to do it. Right. And it's like, who am I to be so selfish to not provide that same opportunity? If I have the capital to move you forward, then I should do that. If I have the knowledge, then I should do that. And, I feel like when my time comes and I'm standing there and, I'm looking at God or whoever you believe in the face, and he's going to say, what did you do while you were on earth with what I gave you? I want to be able to say, hey, my legacy is I helped these 12 people change their family tree, which in turn is going to help, their children understand what it's like, and then their children and their children. And that I've started with the one guy who gave me a shot, who I will forever be grateful for. But now it's like my duty and my calling to go help other people do the same thing at the end of the day. So I'm not trying to harp too much on like fake entrepreneurs or fake coaches and stuff, but it's like, it kind of all like comes back down to that, right? Like people who are so selfish that they're going to take advantage of those who are struggling or trying to climb that mountain. And, who are so selfish to not like give back to others, that they just sit here and they go through life thinking they're creating a legacy or thinking that, the cars and the money in the bank is what it's all about. And at the end of the day, it's not. And like, I'm 35, and the fact that I understand that now makes me feel like, I'm already super blessed. So now it's like, go do it.
It's massive. Last couple of years, I've been able to get very in tune with what I want and the impact I want to make. Our mission statement for the company, we help each other achieve freedom. Just like you said, 10 years ago, that's the opportunity or 12 that I was given, and I want to reciprocate that. And so I built my company as such, so that if you come into the company, you have a track all the way to VP of sales or ownership someday. You know what I'm saying? And there have been several people that have come to the company that they've gone and done their own thing and opened up their own businesses, and I love that. You know, because now I have a basically a success story that came from our company. You know, we may not make $1 off that other business, you know, but I have a success story that came from our company that we can use to recruit more people and create more impact over and over again, you know?
Dude, it's the word, it's that word, it's impact, right? And like, so like, I think like selfishly, like as business owners, we can look at that in two ways. Like what you just did, right? We can use their story to recruit better, to bring better people on board, and to grow our portfolio by growing and changing other people's lives, right? I like to look at it like, and I know like to some people it's kind of crazy. You have kids, right? I know you do. I have kids. I want when I'm gone, that person who I didn't make $1 off of, and he went and started his own business because of information he learned from me, to say, hey, dude, I used to work for your dad. And you know what? He taught me X, Y, and Z, and I was able to go open up my own business. I have 50 employees and I'm helping their families. Like that's the stuff that gets me going and that makes me want to continue to like, just like, puke this information into the world to help other people.
That's a great
I feel like I do that quite a bit. Like I definitely like, just like kind of diarrhea of the mouth, but like to me, it's like as an owner, you got two ways to look at things. Like, and if you can look at things like in a selfish manner and get a little bit of like gratitude from that on a short-term basis, or you can look at, your wins and your successes and how do you make those wins and successes wins and opportunities for everybody else on your team. And at the end of the day, you're going to feel a lot better. Like knowing that you're literally changing family trees and you're not worried about buying your next boat or your next plane. Right. I feel like, when I'm 80 years old is going to make me feel a lot better about my life than, laying in my $100 million mansion with, nobody around.
100%, man.
Yeah.
So again, we went off there a little bit. Let me scale it back. All right. Most businesses fail within 7 years. I think the number right now is 65%. It's actually gone down. It was like at 80% when I first started out. So apparently it's easier to run a business now than it ever has been, which I would agree with.
You get lots of free money now.
Yeah, you get lots of free money. So a lot of businesses lasted through the 7-year mark because of the free money, right? And so, but you didn't have that when you were in year 7. So what do you think was the difference maker for you and your business or businesses at the time?
Yeah. So difference maker number 1 was the mentor that I had, right? He had been in business already for 12 years. So he had already learned lessons and shared them with me so I could avoid those roadblocks throughout the journey. Right. So it was a very clear path, and having that one person to kind of go back to and ask questions to was super helpful. The mindset of having no other option is what ultimately was like the motor behind everything. Right. I feel like, outside of like a money thing, right? Because I had him as like what you mentioned, like a financial backer. So if we ever got in a really bad spot, we had that money to go to. We never had to do that, right? We always ran the play every day and executed, not perfectly, but we did. But just like having that understanding that like I succeed or I die. Yeah. And taking that to heart. People like, I don't say that like to like get a nice little clip from my Instagram or to like, make you guys like to make people think that like I'm some like psychopath. It's like, no, I literally believed that. Like I believed if I didn't make this work, I had no other options. I sure as hell wasn't going back to a 9 to 5. I wasn't going to go like, I knew like if I didn't do this, I quite literally was going to like, mentally be dead and like, why survive? Right. So it was really those two things. And, we never had the capital problem, which is why, most people fail, because of the fact that I had that mentality. I had that mentor to help me, he brought me up that ladder, so to speak. But at the same time, dude, it was just like win or die. That's it.
There's a huge practicality to it too. Because if I think about it, like right now, like the government came in, then that is probably the only thing that could stop me from operating. If I couldn't operate within the confines of regulations, bank accounts and business licenses and stuff like that, they just shut me down completely. I can't imagine going to another business owner, because obviously I wouldn't work for Fortune 500 or anything like that. I'd go work for another small business. I couldn't imagine going to him and saying, hey, here's my resume. And him not being like, why the fuck are you going to work here? You know what I mean? Like, so there's the first thing, and going and being 2 years into the business, right? Where that pivot point is where you normally quit, right? I couldn't imagine going into somebody else's office and being like, hey, I'll take this sales manager position. No. You know, and then seeing how and that was my problem. I got fired from most of the early jobs because I kept telling them how to do theirs, because I kept seeing holes in their systems and their processes and their training and everything. And so I kept getting fired, you know? My mentor fired me once before he hired me back, and then I bought the business.
That was it. Yeah. It sounds like me, like literally, like, I got hired, then I left because I was immature and pissed. And then he was like, okay, I'll bring you back. You know?
It was definitely immaturity that I got fired for sure.
And dude, honestly, like, you know, you asked that question and I almost feel like a fraud that I can't give you like 4 or 5 like bullet points of, well, you know, we pivoted here and I was able to put cash over into this bank account and, you know, I utilized assets. It's like,
it wouldn't do it justice.
Dude, no, and it's like, that's where people forget, like, or you think that there's like some special ticket or some secret. It's like, it's not. I busted my ass and I convinced myself this works or you fail. And and it's like, if I could give one piece of advice to, especially people who are just starting their journey, you have to be able to physically convince your mind and body that this has to work. You don't have any other options. And I think you would be amazed at what you would be willing to do to make that business succeed. Right. Well, like I don't brag about that. Like I quite literally slept in my office. Like that's not like a joke. Like I slept on a blow up mattress. I used to sneak into hotels and eat their free like dinners and lunches because I had family at home that I didn't want to take money away from. You know what I'm saying? Like how many people would do that? Would you sleep in your office? I got sick as fuck one time because they were during like the build out stage of the office. I had to sleep there. It was freezing. There was no heat on top of all the drywall dust everywhere. Right. So I'm like getting no sleep because I'm nervous that the contractors are going to come in at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want them to know I was sleeping there. I'm like inhaling all this dust. You know, I'm like calling my wife. I'm like, oh, I can't talk. I feel like I got pneumonia. And I'm like, we're opening in 2 weeks. I'm like hiring people. And I'm like, this is like, is this what I'm really doing right now?
Yeah. So it's like, that's so nerve wracking hiring people when like you ain't got shit in the bank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude. Or even like a chair for them to sit in during like the interview process. You know, I'm like, take a seat on that stack of furniture pads over there. You know what I mean?
Perfect. Yeah. You're working for a moving company. This is part of our process.
It's comfortable. Yeah. That's more comfortable than a lazy boy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we could go down that rabbit hole all day and have a lot of fun with it. And I'm laughing because, you know, I relate to it and I align with it, you know, and there's so many entrepreneurs now that have not gone through something like that. You know, for me, it was during my divorce. I slept in my office my separation. I slept in my office for 2 weeks, you know what I'm saying? Because it was not the time to get separated or divorced. I was 8 years into the business and not doing well at all. You know, just you know, the valley. I was in a valley, and you know, we started a separation at the same time. But anyway,
it's a double whammy. But your business still succeeded, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So it's because of the mindset of like you had to make it work. You know what I'm saying? Like that's ultimately what it is.
And I think if you don't have that mindset, you're probably not passionate enough about your business, and you just got into it for the money. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have that purpose yet. Once you have that purpose, you do have a win or die mindset. It's ingrained into you because you can't imagine doing anything else than making the impact and living in the purpose that you are right now. I can't imagine going backwards and not being able to live in that again because it's one of the greatest feelings in the world.
100%. And I think that, you know, don't get me wrong. Like I talk about the impact and my legacy now, like from changing people's lives and like moving people forward. But like the impact that I wanted to make 10 years ago was to like make sure my wife and kids are taken care of. And I think that if that can be your passion, like don't think that you have to have like some crazy, like, you know, you want to open up like a children's hospital or something like that's your mission. And that's what's going to drive you. Like, it's okay to have like that most simplistic mindset. Like, you know, we're men, right? And as like hunters and gatherers, we want to take care of the people we love. And like, that was it for me. It was like, that was enough. And unfortunately, it's not enough for some people, I think, and they fail and they forget because they can fall back on whatever. But, so I think it's important to understand that it doesn't have to be like something like great and major in the beginning. It can be just about taking care of your family. But in order to like get past that 2-year mark, 5-year mark, 7-year mark, you have to start to get past the physical things of success, like like the selfish side of things, because once you make it like 2 or 3 years, you're likely taking care of your family in an okay way, right? To where your family's going to be okay. Now you got to kind of figure out what the next step is, or like, who do you want to help next? And if you really want to like catapult your business, you better start to figure out how to make an impact in other people's lives. Because if you cannot figure that out, you're going to tread water for no matter how long you're open in business.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in that stage for a couple of years too. So what do you think because you mainly specialize in service-based businesses, right? Yeah. What do you think the pivot point is for a service-based business to say, okay, now I need a dedicated sales team? Because I have a lot of people come to me with that question: when should I hire my first salesperson? And so I was excited about you coming on the podcast because I got to imagine you've gone through that stage, whether it's in your partnerships or in your own business, where it's like, okay, now we need a dedicated salesperson or sales team, or let's launch a sales program.
Yeah. So like when we're talking like more of like the analytics side of a business, right? Not the mindset side. So in my world, you ultimately have to have at least one person to answer the phone to begin with, right? We're a warm lead company, right? We do a lot of PPC stuff. Obviously, we're extremely well branded. So the lead generation has never really been an issue in that world. Some of the other businesses I have, it is, and we're trying to figure that out. But we've always had to have that one person answer the phone. Where I struggled in the beginning was understanding when to add to that person. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because it's very difficult in any business, let alone a seasonal type business like moving, where you're generating 60% of your leads and income from April to September because it's summertime and kids are out of school, and ensuring that you're staffed well enough to handle your leads during that time. As a new business owner, what happens all too often is, okay, last year I was able to like help answer phones with my sales rep because I had everything was, we weren't that big and it was okay. I know this year I have to focus on making sure that I'm growing the operations side of the business. So I'm likely going to have to bring in help for her to replace me, who I helped. I was the one who helped her last year. So then what happens is like, by March, she's likely going to need help, or that rep's going to need help. Yeah. But you get paralysis, right? You start analyzing this in like November and December, and you're trying to guess how much revenue you're going to generate, starting in March through those months. And then you're trying to put that up against like how much it's going to cost to bring in the new CSR, and you're trying to figure out ROI, right? Like those are all great things. Like in order to succeed, you have to understand the numbers like that for sure. Right. But no decision is worse than making a bad decision in my mind, right? I've always been of the mindset that I know we have to have this person. I know I need another sales rep to grow my business. And there are times that I would hire another person having no idea if that person was needed or not. And I created an illusion that we were going to be so busy and that we had to make it work no matter what, because we have this new person on our team. Okay. So I think that my answer to that would be two-sided, right? Number one, understand your numbers well enough and like the way in which you can divide your time to know when you have to add help to that person. Have conversations with that person about their workload and how well they think they can perform, especially in the sales world, right? It's a mentally draining type thing, especially in a service-based industry when you're answering the same questions over and over again. And you're talking to the same like 4 different people.
Times a week.
Yeah. It's like, it's the same conversations with just 4 different personalities. But also never be afraid to make the decision to grow your business by bringing in a key player, and sales is key. Bring them in to force your hand and the hand of everybody else on your team to bring in the leads and to bring in the opportunities. Okay. And I think that just depends on your level or your want to grow your business. Like how quickly do you really want to do that?
Absolutely.
Because I've done it both ways. I've sat there and I've analyzed, and I just, I hired somebody, and because I understood my numbers well enough. I knew that we would be okay. And I brought a person in and said, hey, I just brought in this in-home estimator. We got to keep him busy. Let's figure out how to do it. Right. And you'd be amazed at how well you can figure that stuff out when you understand that, like, you don't want to uproot that person and ruin their lives if they just decided to join your team.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a adding a salesperson calculator that I run through, right? Especially with my consulting clients. And that's just to kind of give them peace of mind. But it's like you said, what I really know is my first 6 or 7 years in business, I didn't know my numbers. Yeah. I just said, hey, I need somebody to run this division. Let me promote someone or let me hire someone and let me jump. Because at some point, no matter how good the numbers look, there's variables, there's risks involved. Anything could happen. It could take you 3 or 4 people that you have to go through in order to get to that person that's going to work. So you're going to have to be able to handle those hits of that payroll for that couple weeks if they didn't work out, times 3 or 4. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, this whole idea, and I do tell them, just make sure you have the base salary in the bank, right? Yeah. That is the surefire way to make sure that it happens, right? But I never did. You know what I mean? And I made it happen every time. And you grow to the level that you set yourself up for. You said you hire the person, and now the rest of the team has to make it happen in order to support that person. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So, and to support that, your goals and your vision have to be so big that the team understands the importance of bringing in this person and making that work, right? Yeah. Because our goal, guys, from day one has been to achieve X. Yeah. So now we all understand, like, this isn't Josh being selfish and bringing in another sales rep to put more money in his pocket, which is another thing that I think needs to be said, and entrepreneurs need to understand. Do not set yourself up financially to be at a detriment because you have so many bills that you have to pay personally to where you can't grow your business. Yeah. Right. I've seen that happen. I've got a few coaching clients where it's like, hey, you need to hire a salesperson. You need to hire an assistant. Right. Most of the time people don't realize the importance of that, but it's like, Josh, I can't afford the $40,000 a year because, I got all these bills I got to pay. Yeah. So, as a new entrepreneur, make sure you're not agreeing to certain bills, whether it's personally or within your business, that don't match the vision that you have for your company. Right. Mm-hmm. Don't do Lambo living. That's what I call it. Right. don't Lambo live, when you should be driving a Toyota. Like, that's just not the way it should be, because sooner or later that's going to catch up to you, and it's going to bottleneck the growth of your business because you have too much to pay for on your own.
And it's so hard to resist, because I guarantee in that first year, if you had bought a Lamborghini, all your family would be like, oh, you were right, you made it. Like, you get all this validation out of it. You know what I'm saying? But that would have been half of your receivables for the year. Oh,
dude, like, I mean, are you kidding me? Like, that first year, I don't know if I could have afforded something like that. But, like, it's not about, at the end of the day, you will realize, and I'm sure you have, and as you climb the ladder of success, or whatever you deem successful from a monetary standpoint, you will learn that, like, the cars, the trips, the houses, dude, you will get, like, gratification from those for, different maybe reasons. A day. And what's super weird, I don't know if you feel this way, is like, I feel like I get excited to buy something, and it's like every single time I buy something that in my brain, like, makes me cool or successful. Mm-hmm. It's like the time frame that I enjoy it is less and less each time. Yeah. And I kind of feel like selfish saying that out loud, but it's like, like my wife and I bought a very nice house back in January, and it's like, dude, I enjoyed it for like a day, and I'm like, all right, it's just a house. Like, it's just a house. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
There's levels to that too, right? So I had an influx of cash, right? And I wanted to put it into investments, so I didn't touch it. That's how I manage my money, because I'm terrible with money. So I get it out of my hands quickly as I can. And so one of the things that I did was invested in a watch portfolio that we're currently offloading right now. Oh, cool. And a piece of that.
Good time to do that.
Yeah.
For sure.
A piece of that was a Rolex, and it was $30,000, right? And so I made the investment, and I got it in and everything. And I had no desire to wear it. Yeah. Like, I honestly didn't like it that much. I thought I would put it on my wrist and I would like it a lot more. I ended up, falling in love with this tag that is a sixth of the price. You know what I'm saying? But it's a Batman tag, and Batman's my favorite superhero. So
those are nasty.
Yeah. So, cool. But it's crazy because, like, all throughout my 20s, like, the Rolex was it. My father-in-law got a Rolex, and I was like, man, that's when I know I've made it. And this whole idea we have in our 20s of what success is, and it's just ridiculous, you know? And probably my most successful moment, I would say, the other day is when we dropped off my daughter at her first middle school dance. And then when my wife went to go pick her up, she noticed that she went and said bye to 3 different people. And like, it's a small school, you know, so we already know all the kids and like kind of who's who and what. She went and said bye to a popular person. She went and said bye to a nerd, and she went and said bye to like somebody that like has no friends, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And she's kind of given us the breakdown of everything, but that's who she is. She doesn't, you know what I mean? That was like one of the most successful moments in my life, that my child did not like subscribe to one group and was willing to have friendships with everybody, you know? So that was just that's like top 10 for me right now, you know?
Dude, that's amazing. Like that gave me chills to hear that, because their kids, how old is she?
She's 11.
Yeah. So 11-year-olds, I have a 10-year-old daughter. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like, I know like how petty and like she's a cheerleader and stuff, right? Like I know how that drama can be. So the fact that she's doing it, something you should be very proud of. Right. Yeah. And I think that like, that's a very mature mindset. Right. And you just kind of went through the progression of like being a young kid who thinks the Rolexes and the Lambos are cool. And it's like, nah, dude, I get my satisfaction from seeing my kids be good people. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, don't get me wrong. Like I like nice shit. Okay. Like I want to work hard. Like I want money in my bank account. Like I want nice stuff. But it's about the satisfaction. Like you're still smiling about that. How many days later now? Yeah. You know, and I just said, you know, I bought $1 million house, and like, I literally didn't, like a day later, I'm like, it's just a house. Yeah. Like you know, it's cool to pull up and it's nice, but it's like, you know, quick story. I had, a football coach tell me the other day, just text me. He's like, your freshman is amazing. He holds conversations. He asked me how my day was, what I'm doing this weekend, and just randomly text me that, you know, and I'm like,
yeah, kids can't do that.
Oh,
it's massive.
Like that's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, so as you're saying that, like, I'm remembering how great that felt the other day when my kid, I'm like, so like, now I'm proud again. Right. Yeah. You know, you come into my house, you've never been here, and you say, Josh, your house is beautiful. I'm like, that's cool. But you're like, hey, you tell me that story, and then we connect on that level. Right. Yeah. Like that's the stuff. And once you figure out like, that's the shit that really matters, because those, you know, those endorphins and that level of excitement you get from material things, as it dwindles and dwindles and dwindles, you better make sure you're focused. And, you know, I don't think you have to have kids or a wife to like feel that stuff. I think that your mission has to be focused on like other people, right? Your team, your customers, because you can get those same feelings from those people as well.
Well, and it turns into a mental health conversation and something that I went through in my late 20s, because I did have all the things, you know what I mean, and the money in the bank account and all that stuff. And but what you realize is you're right, the dopamine hits less and less and less, you know, so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then if you don't have anything real to back that up, you don't have a real foundation of values and family and impact, you know, you're going to slip into depression. You see it happen with 30-year-old entrepreneurs all the time that are incredibly successful, but they're miserable. Yeah. You know, and they're reaching for all these extreme things that aren't going to fulfill them because they're, you know, and divorce happens, right? But because they're divorced and they barely see their kids, and you know what I mean, they're running their business 18 hours a day still after all these years, you know? Yeah, and so I don't want to get too far off topic, but I think that's where it goes, you know?
Yeah, it does. And it's about, you know, for everybody's different. Like not everybody wants to be married. Not everybody can or want to have kids. Right. So what we're like relishing in right now that we enjoy, other people may not, which, you know, which is why your mission as an entrepreneur, once you get past like those initial couple of years and you've got steady income and you're doing your thing there, like you got to find out what's next. And, you know, you asked me the question about like the 7 years and the secret, you know, and I would say that there's a layer of that too, is like, you know, I get bored super easy. Okay. So like, I'm all over the place. Like I'm always looking for different investments, and like, you know, some do great, some fail. And I'm like always looking to like buy new franchises and stuff because like I get bored. Right. But a lot of times that my boredness helps me focus on my mission, because like I'm always looking for that opportunity to move, you know, Jeremy in Texas, you know, into his next opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's key that people just know, like, I don't think Doug's saying you got to have a wife and kids to like have a fulfilled life. Just make sure that you're fulfilling the other bucket that you may not understand you need to fill yet. And that is the bucket of like giving and providing to others, like experiences and memories like that. It's not just about the cash and the materialistic things.
Yeah, it's the friendships, the relationships. That's a huge piece of that bucket too as well. So I imagine this is a good segue into my next question. And then you kind of touched on my last question already. So we'll touch that briefly. But my next question is, what is the more than mindset?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what's funny is it took me I feel like it took me like forever to figure that out. Right. I was sitting there and I constantly was struggling. You know, I'm not very creative at all. Like, I'm just not. Like, I can't even draw a stick figure. Like, I'm like a horrible, my brain, I don't think like that. Right. Yeah. I'm very black and white. So I'm like, hey, I'm talking to my wife and I'm like, I got to figure out like something to name this podcast, like to name my mission. Like, how can I make this easy and, you know, like memorable for people? And I was like, you know, I just want, you know, it actually started because I got super upset with a couple of contractors who were doing work in my house. And I'm like, they just don't understand that, like, my experience with them is about more than like the color of paint he's putting on my walls or like the carpet that he's putting down. Like, that all looks good, but you're pissing me off because you're missing the customer experience or you're missing the communication, right? I'm like, owning a business is about more than just like the product that you're installing or the service that you're giving. And I just kept saying, I was like, it's just like, I got to figure out a way to say, like, running a business and being successful is about more than what everybody else is telling you that it's about. And she was like, dude, how about just more than? And I'm like, no, that's stupid. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's just two words. Like, how can I grow that? I'm like, you know what? I woke up one morning and I'm like, you know what? She's probably right. I just got to take something. I got to go. So, you know, the more than mindset is just about an understanding that your business, your personal life, whether you're a father, you're a husband, it's always about more than like the surface level of things that you're doing or seeing. Okay. When you're giving an estimate to a customer in the business world, you need to understand and find the more than in that process, the more than in that conversation for a couple reasons. One, it's going to help you get the sale because you're going to connect on a personal level. Why do you need my service? How can I curtail this to fit your needs even better? How is my service or my product actually going to change your life or the life of whoever you're buying it for, right? Like, having those in-depth conversations, but understanding, like, going into that conversation, that it's your job to find that more than as a part of it, right? Understanding that driving your kid to school for 8 minutes is about more than just throwing them in the back seat and dropping them off and saying, hey, have a good day, right? That's an opportunity to talk to them about lessons in life and like to listen to them and to understand like struggles that they're going through, right? And to be more than just a chauffeur, like being a dad, like being a mom, right? So the more than mindset is just about like digging a little bit deeper than the surface level, getting to like the root of some things in your business and in your personal life, and understanding how to take that information and make your life or the life of somebody else that you're talking to or doing business with or a family member, make their lives better, right? Find the more than in every situation, implement that. And I can guarantee you, like, you're going to feel so much more fulfilled because you understand like what it's about. Like, you understand more about that person or you understand more about the situation. And it's just like, hey, it's simple, but hey, it's more than that, right? Like, you know, hey, my payroll last week was $110,000. I could say my payroll is 110 grand. Look at me, I'm successful. But whoa, it's about more than that, right? Like, how many families did you feed?
Right.
How many families did you help to have to pay your employees that much money? That's what it's about, right? So find the more than in that in each situation.
I love that. I love it because it takes me back to my roots of salesmanship. And one of the things I realized, and I only knocked doors for 3 months before I built out the program that we have now, right? And it's a modified version. Obviously, it's been through 10 years of business, but one of the biggest pieces of the training when I'm teaching someone our sales process is it's not about the product, it's not about the price, it's about the lifestyle, right? Yeah. And so if you can meet a customer, and by the end of that conversation, you're teaching them a way that they can improve their lifestyle, then you're going to sell that customer. You know what I'm saying? And so everything you were saying about it's about more than the actual product or what you're doing for them. It's about, you know, they're making their life better. You know what I'm saying?
Why? It's like the why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, if I was more creative, I could probably come up with a different slogan or a different name for like the podcast and stuff like that, right? But to me, it's like don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
It's about more than that. Life
Yeah.
is about more than paying your bills and about more than like waking up and working your 9 to 6. Like you can literally find like a more than type mindset in everything that you do every single day, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like eating breakfast. Hey, it's about more than just putting like sugar in your body. Like, hey, I'm fueling my body. That's the more than in that situation, right? Like it's something that can be implemented and utilized. And like, that's my goal. Is like, I want to help entrepreneurs, people who, you know, who are just starting out, like not only share the business stuff that we've talked about on this, like, you know, the day-to-day stuff and just mindset stuff, but just understand that like, don't stress, don't freak out, look for the more than, and like, you're going to be able to sleep a lot better every night.
Okay. So I think we know this answer because you kind of talked about it when you talked about the difference in what made you successful as an entrepreneur, kind of that don't quit. And then you started getting into the legacy piece. And so this is the question I ask at the end of every episode. And, you know, the podcast is building great sales teams, but it's about more than that.
Yeah.
And I can think of every situation, which I can use this more than now. And I'm definitely going to tell everybody, hey, Josh Payne, more than, check it out. Yeah. But, you know, when people say, hey, you do sales, right? Well, I do more than sales, you know, or you have the building great, or like you build great sales teams. Well, it's about more than building great sales teams, you know? Yeah. And then they'll say like, you do solar, right? Well, we do more than solar, you know? Right. And what it comes down to is legacy. My more than always ends up, everything in between from what you think it is to all the more thans, it ends up at legacy. Yeah. I mean, that's where everybody's answer to everything ends up. Like, why do you do that? Why? If you ask why enough times, you'll get to the root. Yeah. You know, you get to the reason, the real reason why. Yeah. And so my question is, what is legacy to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, legacy to me, in the most simplistic terms, is the conversations that people have with the people that I love once I'm gone. That's what my legacy is. What are people saying about their dad, about their husband, about their friend, once I've left this earth? That's what my legacy is. And what I want my legacy to be is the impact in the family trees that I was able to change by investing knowledge, investing time, investing capital, if need be, into individuals who would just have never been given that opportunity because of where they came from, because of their upbringing, because of their mindset, whatever it might be. I want to change their family trees, and I want those conversations that people are having with the ones I love to be about how your dad changed my life. Not that your dad gave me a job, not that your dad gave me a loan. Your dad changed my family tree, and I was able to change my kids' lives and the lives of so many people to come.
I love that. And I love what you said earlier too. It wasn't thousands, it wasn't millions, it was 12. Yeah. It was 12. And that number kind of stuck out for the rest of the podcast. Like, I love that it's not this just astronomical number. It doesn't have to be, because you're right. It does end up, it's like 12 to the nth power though. Yeah. You know, where you could be, you know, 7 minutes in heaven, maybe 700 years on earth, right? And you can look down after 7 minutes in heaven and see the impact that you had from those 12, from you to those 12 people, or you can even go back, your mentor, you know what I'm saying? Or the people that influenced you in not just your business life, but your personal life. And then they impacted you, and you impacted those 12 people, and those 12 people, you know, impacted millions after that.
That's what it's about. You know, I say 12, that was the number I pulled. You know, I don't know if I have like a number. I don't want to put a number to it. I don't want like my legacy. Like, I was only able to help 11. You know what I'm saying? I'm proud to say that there's already 5, right? There's already 5 people who are given an opportunity that I was given, right? Mm-hmm. Where that number stops, I don't know. I'll likely be like on my deathbed, or, you know, like old and feeble to where I can't have conversations anymore. But that's just what it's about to me.
Do you know how many apostles there were?
12, 13?
12.
12, yeah.
That's why that number stuck in my head.
Yeah.
And that number was not a mistake. It was not random.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I believe that.
And then why am I stuck on it? You know what I mean? So
it's weird, right?
In my head, I was like, wait a second. How many apostles did Jesus have? And he had 12.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Don't tell my wife that. I always joke with her. I'm like, do you know, like what Jesus' name, like they said it was Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
That was his name. And I was like, Yeshua translates to Joshua in the English language. She's like, don't fucking start. You're not Jesus.
Don't do that. That actually is a sin in the Bible. We can't do that. No.
Yeah.
No,
we're going somewhere here. No, I'm completely kidding.
Yeah, you got to tell her about that. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
All right, brother. Well, it's been an amazing show. I would imagine a lot of our listeners are at that stage where you could possibly help them out, create some opportunity for them in their business or in one of your other franchises. How do they get in touch with you?
So Instagram is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. It's _Josh Payne. You can also go to my website, thejoshpayne.com. There's a link there where you can submit information requests on partnerships, mentorship, whatever you're interested in. But if you want to get to me quick, you got a quick question, whatever it might be, just hit me on Instagram. I'll get back to you pretty quickly, and don't hesitate. Don't feel like you got a stupid question, or don't feel like, you're so far behind where you should be. Like I found that to always be the case. Just ask, reach out and ask. Right. You're going to find guys like me, and the real ones are going to help and do so without expecting anything in return. So this has been fantastic for me. I've really enjoyed it. Like, I don't even feel like it was a podcast. We're just kind of, we're two buddies just chatting about life and about business and success. So thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you in person next time. Absolutely, brother. It's been an awesome podcast. Can't wait to put it out there. This will probably be out as soon as next week. So you'll start seeing all the stuff for it. And we'll get you set up with a link and everything so you can have access to all that stuff and share it on your mediums as well too. No, that's perfect. Yeah, we'll have Marissa take it and share it like crazy. This has been fun, man. I really appreciate it. You have no idea. Like, I've done a couple of these. I always feel like I don't want to do that stuff, and this has been honestly, this has been my favorite one. Well, and you'll find too, and I got to outro it, and I don't mind putting this stuff on the podcast. I don't really care. But you'll find too, you dial in your message by talking about it, and the podcast helps so much with that. I just did my first speaking engagement a couple weeks ago, and it came out so easy because I've talked about these things on the podcast 100 times over. So many times. So those reps are going to be huge for you. But yeah, well, you've been a big help, man. Really, you really have been. I really appreciate it. I hope you know that. Like, you've been a huge help. Not even with your comment of turn the camera around, but like even the call we had with Marissa, like that stuff's it's been super good, man. So yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm here for, brother. All right, let's get building. We'll see you, brother.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We appreciate it. Make sure you like, share, and leave a review wherever you consume podcasts, and subscribe so you're notified when we release new content. Great sales teams aren't recruited. They are built brick by brick. Let's get building.